On a stormy Tuesday morning at Harborview General Hospital, the emergency department was already overflowing, with exhausted families crowding the corridors, elderly patients clutching medication lists, and exhausted nurses moving between rooms as alarms echoed through the building. Near the registration desk sat a quiet man named Daniel Brooks, dressed in a faded work coat and dusty boots, carrying a cracked canvas bag, and looking so ordinary that almost nobody noticed him. Yet beneath his tired appearance was a carefully concealed identity. He was actually Marcus Hale, a senior patient rights investigator assigned to examine disturbing reports about how the hospital treated people without money, insurance, or influential connections. For nearly a month, Marcus had studied complaints describing patients being left unattended for hours, families pressured for unofficial payments, and vulnerable people being spoken to as though their poverty made them less deserving of medical attention. But hospital executives had repeatedly insisted that the accusations were exaggerated and blamed overcrowding for every delay. Rather than arrive with government officials and warning letters, Marcus had chosen another approach, spending an entire day undercover so he could witness what happened when nobody believed an important person was watching. And within his first 30 minutes, he began seeing things that made his stomach tighten. At the registration counter, Marcus quietly explained that he had severe abdominal pain and no insurance, but the clerk barely looked up before sliding a clipboard toward him and saying, "Take a seat until someone calls your name." Even as a well-dressed businessman approached minutes later and was immediately escorted toward a private consultation area after mentioning the name of a hospital donor. Marcus watched the difference carefully, but before he could question anyone, a young mother named Teresa arrived carrying her 6-year-old son, whose face was pale and whose breathing had become frighteningly shallow. And when she begged for immediate help, an employee told her she needed to complete the financial paperwork first. Marcus stepped forward and said, "Forget the paperwork for a moment. That child needs a nurse." But a security officer immediately warned him not to interfere, forcing him to step aside as Teresa pleaded for someone to believe her, until a respiratory therapist named Evelyn Carter heard the commotion and rushed over without asking about insurance, income, or identification. Evelyn quickly assessed the boy, called the pediatric emergency team, and stayed beside his terrified mother while whispering, "Your son is our priority right now," a simple sentence that Marcus knew should have been unnecessary in any hospital. Later, while Marcus remained in the waiting area pretending to be another frustrated patient, he overheard a frightened husband named Samuel being approached by a hospital employee who quietly suggested that an additional payment could move his wife higher on the waiting list. Samuel looked horrified and whispered, "I don't have much money," before pulling a few crumpled bills from his wallet, and Marcus felt his anger rise as he realized the rumors were not merely administrative complaints, but evidence that desperate people were being placed in impossible situations. Instead of confronting the employee immediately, Marcus discreetly documented what he had witnessed and continued observing, eventually discovering another disturbing pattern involving patients who could not afford certain services being redirected elsewhere, while insured patients were offered additional options. Yet the day also revealed unexpected heroes, including Evelyn, a maintenance worker who stopped to comfort an elderly patient, and a young physician named Dr. Leah Morgan, who repeatedly challenged decisions that placed financial considerations ahead of medical urgency, proving to Marcus that the hospital was not filled with bad people, but was trapped inside a system where some employees had forgotten what their jobs were supposed to mean. The next morning, the hospital administrator, Gregory Shaw, walked into the main conference room expecting a routine review, only to find a team of state investigators waiting with sealed documents, patient care records, complaint summaries, and authorization for an unannounced compliance examination. Gregory's confidence disappeared when Marcus entered behind them, wearing a formal suit and carrying his official credentials, because he suddenly recognized the supposedly helpless patient from the previous day, and Marcus calmly said, Yesterday you saw a man with no insurance. Today you're looking at the person who was sent here to find out why that mattered. Gregory immediately tried to explain that the hospital was overwhelmed and that individual employees had probably acted outside official policy. But Marcus placed his notes on the table and replied, "A policy means nothing when frightened patients experience something completely different at the front door," before describing the waiting room incident, the unofficial payment request, Teresa's endangered child, and the dramatic difference in treatment given to patients who appeared wealthy or influential. Then Marcus added something Gregory had not expected. "I'm not here to punish everyone for the failures of a few. I'm here to make sure the people who come here on the worst days of their lives are never forced to prove that they deserve compassion." The investigation continued for weeks, leading to disciplinary action against employees involved in unethical practices, new rules separating financial screening from emergency assessment, mandatory training for staff, an anonymous reporting system for patients and workers, and stronger oversight of waiting list decisions so that medical urgency could never be quietly replaced by financial influence. Evelyn and Dr. Leah were recognized for protecting vulnerable patients, while several employees who had remained silent were encouraged to report misconduct, and the hospital slowly began rebuilding trust as staff members realized that every person entering those doors carried the same basic human need: to be treated with dignity when they were scared, sick, and vulnerable. Months later, Marcus returned to Harborview without disguising himself, and he noticed something small but powerful at the emergency entrance. A sign beside the registration desk that read, "Medical need comes first. Every patient deserves respect." While Evelyn moved through the waiting room, greeting people by name and making sure nobody was forgotten. Marcus smiled when he remembered how easily everyone had dismissed Daniel Brooks, the poor-looking stranger in the worn coat, because the real lesson was never about an undercover investigator exposing a hospital. It was about proving that a person's clothes, bank balance, insurance card, or social status can never determine the value of their life. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.